My career sucks.
Sex just isn't the same.
What's my purpose?
Where did this fat come from?
My relationship is killing me.
I'll never be happy.
My debt is piling up. I'll never find love. Why can't I be like other gay guys? Hey guys, it's time to get a grip, stop whining, make a bold move, and do something amazing with your 40-plus gay life. Let's get to the show with your Tell It Like It Is host, Rick Clemons, who does his best to never act like a dick or a diva unless you act like one first.
Hello, gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of 40-plus Gay Men Gay Talk. We are in the new year. I think this is podcast number 2. And before we dive in, don't forget to sign up to be part of the community on Facebook. Go to Facebook, look for 40-plus Gay Men Gay Talk, the community. And also make sure you're also checking out the website where we meet once a month. And we have these great gay men's chats. You can sign up for those at gaymengaytalk.com or gaymenschats.com. And I hope y'all are writing all this down because we're gonna pack you with a whole lot of information on this episode about some amazing things that are coming your way to help you truly connect into yourself. And one of the things that happens with most of us as gay men, we lose that ability to connect to ourselves, and then we get into relationships, and then we have to deal with sexuality, and then we have to deal with our sex drives and all these other things. And then we're like, nothing's working. So, it's just, I'm a screw up. I'm a failure. No, you're not. Whether it's your sex drive, your kinks, you're wanting to be in relationships, your work, whatever it is, it's all about getting connected deeper and more intimately to yourself. And what a better guy to talk about all this than my buddy Court Vox. Other than being a really handsome guy, I mean, he's just a good soul. I'm going to go right there. He's a good soul, and he has taken his journey of becoming who he is, because we're always becoming who we are, and transformed it into some amazing work. He is a certified sex and intimacy coach. He does some amazing retreats. We're actually going to talk about one that's coming up that there's a good possibility I'm finally going to get to experience this with Court, but he really helps you connect to yourself in all those beautiful ways. So it's time for Rick to shut up and let Court connect with you all. Welcome to the podcast, buddy.
Oh man, thanks so much for that enthusiastic introduction. It's always a pleasure.
Well, you paid me enough money for that one that I'm like, okay, fine. Okay, fine, bitch. I'll say a lot of good stuff about yeah. But no, I mean it, man. I mean, we've done some stuff before. We've had you on the podcast. I follow your work. I know this deeper space you help people step into, which is really, it is about connection in so many ways, on so many levels. So kind of walk us into like why that connection piece can be such a powerful thing in just about any aspect of our lives.
Yeah, I mean, I think where we're at in our culture in this moment in time is that we are, quote unquote, connected to people globally, right? On social media and through media itself. And, there is this kind of messaging from media itself that we're all connected. And, we are all connected, but there is something that's missing, which is this piece around tribe, this piece around community. And when I say community and tribe, I'm not really talking about like huge consorts of people, but, it's like we go to work and we do our thing and then we kind of come home and there's a lot of loneliness and a lot of aloneness. And so, my work is really about bringing people together. And it's also about learning yourself. So when I work with clients privately, it's around like reigniting or learning yourself as an erotic human being, whatever that means to you. And everybody has a different connection to that. And so kind of discovering that is a process. And, I have a workshop coming up in March 6th to the 9th called Connect. And the intention behind that retreat and that workshop is really for men to be able to connect with each other through eroticism in ways that they might not have known existed. Or they might have like had an inkling of it, but haven't known how quite to access it. So, that's through language and through communication, it's through touch, it's through fantasy play and role play, as well as understanding DS, the dominance and submission piece of BDSM, so power dynamics. from like a place that's accessible, because you go, oh, well, BDSM, like that seems interesting and hot and also super scary, but like where do we start, right? So all of these are sort of like portals, if you will,
Yeah.
into erotic connection that might not be places that you've necessarily known or have tried or had outlets to try in the past.
It's so interesting you bring up the BDSM piece, because it is something that it's very much of an erotic space. It's a turn on. It's something that some people are like, yes, this is totally my thing. This is what I'm totally into. And then there's people who are like, that sounds interesting, but I don't think I could. And then there's those like, oh my gosh, no way.
Yeah.
The other day I was actually coaching a client, and he was really truly complaining about his work and all this sort of stuff. And we had already talked about some sexual stuff. Okay. This was a different session altogether. And then now everything was around work. Court, he had one of the biggest breakthroughs when I said, it sounds like you're having the similar relationship with your boss that you're struggling with in your relationship, because you're fighting the dominant energy and you're not allowing the other person to see the shadow of you that wants to be the dominant, yet you're being the submissive, and you don't want to play that role. You don't even want to be that role. And he had such a shift. Now, yes, I connected some dots that was like, I don't know if this is really what's going on for him, but I thought I'm going to roll the dice. I had enough information that I thought I could go there. So many people think BDSM is this weird kink, all this sort of like, we are all living in a BDSM world. If we really think about it, there's always going to be dominance. There's always going to be some submission. There's going to be something that takes you to that edge. I wish people could just embrace and go, okay, let's see what this really looks like if I allow myself to go deeper. And I'm sure that's what you see when you do this at Connect. Like there's probably somebody who's like, I'm not going to do this. And then suddenly out of the shadow comes that person, right?
Well, there's a difference between seeing something and having a perception of what it is, and then having an opportunity to feel into what it feels like to be in a dominant role or to be in a submissive role. What's interesting also is, looking at shadow work and looking at, example of this client. Yes, he might want to break through and be more in a dominant role. And there is something around, when we can track patterns that we keep coming back to, of like, he keeps getting stuck in this submissive role. And I'm not saying this is him, but, if you find yourself in the same pattern 3, 4, 5 times, you sort of have to take a step back and be like, what is it about this that I'm attracted to, that I keep stepping into? And instead of, I don't really like it in my real life, but there's something here for me, and understanding like what it is about this that is attractive, that is a turn on, that has charge or resonance, and then potentially playing with it in erotic space. Of maybe if I could get my need met over here, I wouldn't have to like let it play out in my daily life in a way that doesn't feel so good for me. So, these are like things that I experiment and kind of work with clients around to discover. And look, for men to be in submissive roles is not exactly, the pride of the month. When you ask somebody if they're a top or a dominant, there's a lot of hands like, yeah, it's me. Yeah, it's me.
Yeah.
To kind of admit that you are a submissive or you are a bottom, there is a specific pride that needs to be in you to be able to own that, because it's not really celebrated in our culture. I think in my work, though, I do celebrate submissives, and I do celebrate those people that come to the table with something different, because it's not necessarily that there is a differential. There is just a meeting point, right? The energy of my dominance meets the energy of your submissiveness. And that is a meeting point, and that's a beautiful thing. Whereas like my dominance and your dominance, they're going to butt heads. It's not a fit, right? So it's not necessarily that I'm above the submissive. It's just that there is there's a joint relationship that takes place. It's a symbiotic relationship.
And it's so important to start to unravel that and embrace it, as we move through our lives. I mean, I have moved. I mean, I'm a pretty bold energy, but I've
What?
also found. Well, I try not to. I try, but every time somebody tries to make me not be,
Yeah.
the bitch comes out. Let's just go there, right? Um, but I've also, as I've gotten older, okay, I'm 61 years old, and in the past few years, I've really like, that's not so important to me to be as much of that.
Yeah.
And it's been really interesting to see it's not only in work court, but it's in everything.
Mm.
I find it across the board, like, interacting with my kids and interacting with, friends. Yes, I'm a Leo, so yes, I do need the spotlight. I own that. I admit that. I'm saying it here on the podcast, gang. But I also realize there's a beautiful piece of that Leo energy being able to like step aside and say,
Mhm.
here, you go be there. Let me observe you in that space. And even sexually for myself, I've seen the shift in my own way I enjoy intimacy and being erotic and
Mhm.
everything. I have definitely submitted to, I'm okay with me not being as dominant. I'm okay with me not being a total top. I'm
Right.
also okay with me not caring if I fuck at all. I'm really cool with being a total side and like and being able to say that was a big
Yeah.
thing for me. Like, hey, this is what I really enjoy more, right? And just allowing myself to step into that space of release, that's a huge thing.
Yeah, and I think what I love about your platform is it's really speaking to men over 40, and I really see like a shift that takes place in men who are kind of crossing the line into their 40s, which
Mm-hmm.
is sort of this space of, our 20s are this big kind of romp, if you will. Our
Mm-hmm.
30s are kind of like really focused on career and really like making something of ourselves. Then we get to 40 and we're kind of like, okay, well, now what?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of us have put our sexuality or eroticism, and I'll just say, even the guys who are total sluts in their 20s and 30s, there is something that shifts in your 40s where you
Mm-hmm.
kind of go, is that enough for me
Right.
to just have random hookups and sleep with a new guy every night or whatever it is? It's sort of like there's something else, and I don't want to compare anybody's sex life to what's available, but it's sort of like when you've had a certain meal for so many nights over and over again, you're like, okay, it's time to try something new.
Something new. Uh-huh.
And, same thing for people who have been in like long-term relationships for 20 years and been monogamous. And they're kind of like, okay, it's been 20 years and I'm kind of tired of the same meal and I'm ready
Mm-hmm.
for something else. It's not that I want to get rid of this, but I'm craving a different meal. And so, I feel like at 40, we kind of come to this place of, well, we're not the same as we were 20 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
10 years ago, and like who am I now?
Yes.
And many of us are, have resources, whether that's financial or just wisdom of like being around long enough to be able to make different choices for ourselves. And so I feel like, the majority of my clients are around 40. Some of them are like mid 30s and then up. So it's interesting. Our bodies kind of change cellularly every 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we think, oh, well, we're just supposed to have the same turn-ons and the same desires for our entire life, same kinks. And it's sort of like, well, no, you're a different actual body in this
Mm-hmm.
moment. So like, who are you erotically in this moment in time? And like, if you were to say to yourself, I don't know what I don't know, and kind of come in as like an open book, a student, it's like there's a lot that you don't know. There's a
Yeah.
lot that you may think you know, and to have a perception of something, having seen it, is very different than feeling it in your body.
I think a lot of the feeling too is coming from that space of being self-aware enough that you're like, oh, okay, this is something new that I'm feeling. This is
Oh
something
yeah.
new that I'm experiencing. But being able to latch onto that and go, oh, wait, something's broken. Nothing is broken. It's just And sometimes it's not even really new, Court. I mean, it's like it's a piece of you that surfaces. Let's just say that it's come to the surface, and it's like, okay, let's play in this arena now for a little bit. And I find it so valuable when we allow those pieces to surface.
Mm-hmm.
We don't immediately reject them. We might at some point once we're like, oh no, that's not really for me. But when we go, okay, well, let's go see what happens. It's one of my favorite things to work with my clients and go, okay, but what if you had the mindset of let's see what happens versus immediate rejection, right?
Mm-hmm.
As I was reading through the descriptions and everything, for Connect and everything, I was like, okay, if I was a guy that wasn't really sure, I would probably be like, push away, push away, push away, push away. But if I'm a guy that's like, let's see what happens, I'd be like, okay, right? Because it's beautiful what you have in the descriptions. I encourage everybody to go read. In fact, I encourage everybody to go to this retreat because I think it's something that could truly open you up. If you're somebody who's feeling, I'm going to go back to what Court said at the very beginning of this podcast, the loneliness and aloneness, those arenas alone is about getting reconnected to something within you. Yes, there's different ways of being lonely and all this sort of stuff. But I think the aloneness is actually something that gets much more self-created because we disconnect. We disconnect from people. We disconnect from ourselves. We disconnect from our desires. We disconnect from what could be. And I always bring it into the realm of like improv theater. If you stay in an energy of yes and, life becomes so different because there's always this possibility. Yes, I enjoy being erotic and I might enjoy kink. Yes, and I'm a top, but I'm also a very big side who just loves to just have my cock stroked and my balls played with and nothing else has to be happening. But being able to do the yes and with yourself then invites you to step forward to being able to open that doorway with other people. And it doesn't always have to be about eroticism. It can be about your career move. It can be about, oh, I like my job and I wish I could do something else as a side hustle. Well, where is that connection that's missing for you to believe you can go do that side hustle? And I think so much of what you bring to this work, Court, yes, somebody reading it from the outside would go, oh, it's all about sex and getting up. It's not. It's about getting deeper into the truth of who we are and really understanding ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of reiterate what you just said, I use eroticism and I use sexuality as a tool for personal growth and to help people kind of unlock and rediscover themselves. And it is a lot of these parts have been within us our whole lives and they've kind of remained dormant. Yeah. And sometimes it just takes a little like tweak to go, oh, turn the lights back on in the house. And, a lot of the exercises that I walk people through are really designed to not just have you think in a different way, but have you feel in a different way. And when we're having somatic experiences mixed with processing, being able to talk about these things, there's a different resonance to experiential learning than there is, just talking about it. I love what you just said about the yes and improv, because so much of actually all of sex is improv, right? But improv is not just people standing on the stage and there is like a skill set to that. There is a skill set to trusting yourself, and there is a surrender that takes place in trusting that whatever you say is going to be the right thing. And with sex, there is a piece around, well, I could keep playing the same script out. I could keep showing up and with the same players and the same tools that I have in my toolbox. But what if I were to go back to school a little bit and learn how to communicate differently, learn how to use tools, whether those are toys or those are soft tools of deep listening, better touch skills, learning how to connect and move with my own body. And then if I were to take that into my improv scene, how would that shift the scene? Right? shift the scene a lot because I'm connected to myself. I'm listening to the other person. We're having a completely different performance.
Oh, and it's a completely different experience.
Yeah. And so, but I do love the yes and piece of like, I always say, I'd like to be in a place of discomfort, like
Mhm.
not in a place of feeling unsafe or like a hard no, but sort of like there's something here that's like a little uncomfortable, and I still would like to go forward in it. Like
Mhm.
that is Peter Levine refers to that as the learning edge of resilience, sort of like
Mm.
kind of like right there. And that's where the most juice of our eroticism is in that place that's just tiny bit uncomfortable. It's like what's on the other side of that,
Mhm.
to your point, like being curious.
Well, and the discomfort when you're standing on the edge of that discomfort, like it's right there. You can probably work through it, but there's still that questioning. I have always found in my personal experiences that that's when 99% of the time I have the biggest breakthroughs
Hmm.
because I've allowed myself. Okay, then this is really hard for me to talk about because I actually do suffer from vertigo. So for me to describe it, I even have a vertigo feeling as I'm starting to get ready to talk about this. The standing on the edge of the cliff
Hmm.
is not something that you would find me doing really anymore. I mean, I used to be like, sure, but now that the vertigo is actually there, even as I'm saying it, I can feel my head kind of going, oh, here we go, right? But I also know the resilience to step back and not be ashamed of that is
Hmm.
where I continue to grow. And I've found when I find myself resisting, so like there's been some resistance around a book I'm writing and getting number 3 book started. And I'm like, because I'm standing on the edge,
Right.
I'm really standing on the edge. And when I had the latest breakthrough around both of those things, I also had some breakthroughs around my erotic play and the way
Mm.
I felt sexually, because I
Interesting.
realized all of it was operating around this little cliff I was standing on about book and should I go forward, should I not go forward, all these things. It actually was tied to podcasting too, because that was the same time I decided to put my first original podcast to rest after 10 years. And it was hard, but all of that
Mhm.
was on the cliff because all that was so much part of my identity, and it was affecting what I was doing erotically and sexually. Like everything was standing on the cliff.
Hmm.
And literally, when I made these decisions, like let go, surrender, step back, none of this has to happen, but everything could happen. Here's how I'm going to step forward. Everything unlocked. And it was such an interesting experience for me as an erotic human being.
Yeah, we are we are full spectrum human beings, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you were to think about your life as a pie and where all your energy is placed, so many of us are placing our energies in different places, and sex
Mm-hmm.
sort of gets like the last bite.
Mm-hmm.
It's the last, we put the least into it. We just expect that it's supposed to happen. And, to hear you talk about some of your other obstacles and how you kind of moved through them, of course, it makes sense to me that you would that would translate over into your sex life because there's a feeling of empowerment and
Mm-hmm.
autonomy over yourself and knowing what you're capable of and being able to step into other places of your life in the same way. So that makes total sense. I lost my train of thought.
It happens. It happens to the best of us. I mean, one of the things that, as you were talking, one of the things that was going through my head was, but this is something that can stop someone from even feeling like, okay, I can never find a relationship or whatever. If like suddenly they're standing on that precipice of, I can't even get hard anymore. I can't even ejaculate. So who's going to want to be well, you're on the cliff and there's some resilience waiting for you to step into it and go, okay, but what can you do? What
Yeah.
are you capable of doing? And I mean, it's always interesting to go through those moments. I mean, as men age, guys, those that are listening, I know some of you are feeling in what I just described. Like, yep, I just don't, the ejaculation is not what it used to be. Takes
Mhm.
forever to, even with a pill, whatever. But the beauty is when we step into those spaces and we connect to that truth, now we can hold it and acknowledge it and go, okay, it's going to take a little bit longer. So what can I do in my erotic way of showing up to continue it? I'm a very like honest person in bed these days, which I kind of was before. Now I'm at probably even more so. Like I can actually say, hey, I know you're enjoying that. That's not really giving me pleasure. So I want you to enjoy doing what you're doing because that's obviously making you feel really good. But you have to deliver that kind of a message in a really positive way so as not to put your partner or partners like, oh, great, I'm really a failure here. Nobody's ever a failure in bed unless they believe it in their own head. That's my theory. But
yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point of like being able to communicate those things in a way that feels like a soft approach instead of like, no, I don't like that. Let's stop. Right.
Yeah.
I was speaking to a urologist friend of mine yesterday, and we were talking about how he gets so many clients. And I have a lot of clients too that have gone through prostate cancer and had their prostate removed, and so they no longer ejaculate,
right.
and have erectile issues. And he was saying there's just so much pressure just in his office. There's so much pressure on hardness and to have these huge loads and to, it's so much pressure that there creates this like hypervigilance in our bodies where it's like when we're thinking about that, it's really hard to be present. And that's, when people tell me they want intimacy in their lives, what they're really telling me is that they would like physical connection where they're not thinking about their grocery list or what they're doing tomorrow. They're just so entrenched in that pleasure that there's nowhere else to go. And to be able to do that, a lot of it has to do with, how we step into those spaces, but also, this 30-minute rule of like, okay, we're going to get in and we're going to do a little licky, sucky, fucky,
Right.
and it's like a routine. Like we know that script. And so to keep things interesting, specifically with the same person, if you're going to be with a partner over and over again, it does require for you to bring in new skills and new kind of opportunities to play in the bedroom. And if you've not done any kind of study or you haven't had any kind of teaching around that, it's totally understandable that you wouldn't know what to do or what's even available. And so that is why people come to me. That's a big reason of like, I don't know what I don't know, and I'm interested in learning. I also do get a lot of clients who are, have changes in their bodies, whether that's huge weight gain or weight loss. People who have gone through prostate surgery and, are learning their new body again. And, I'll say that there is a level of grief there that has to be processed. And also, as you're processing the grief, but pursuing pleasure, you're sort of like balancing. But if you go into this space of pure grief, there is this sort of like space of like, well, we've kind of given up curiosity of what is possible with this new body that you have. And there is so much to discover there.
And I think that's one of the keys is always keeping yourself open to the curiosity. Like what else? What else could be done? How could I show up differently? What might be one thing? I mean, my husband and I have talked about this numerous times. Like, okay, what is something that you want? What is something that you desire? We never end it with that I'm not giving you. What is something you want? What is something you desire? Because it keeps it in a very beautiful space of tell me what you desire. What do you want versus that I'm not giving you? Because that's where the passive aggressive can show. Okay, fine. So I'm not giving this to you. So tell me what you want. That's one of the worst ways to show up. Okay. I'm not going to say we do it perfectly every time. True confessions.
I know
we're human, right? But
does.
The interesting pieces of A, communication, number one, B, we have been shamed as a society, and especially as gay men. Let's not talk about any of this. I love how you said sex becomes the last thing that gets any true attention, even though, gay men, all they think about is sex. No, we don't. we think about careers and money and this and that and that, and then suddenly sex is part of the equation. But just like everybody else on the planet, if we were to take like the hierarchy of quote needs, sex is kind of one of those spaces that, oh, it actually doesn't have a ranking until, okay, let's get off, right? Guys, yes, I know guys want to get off a lot more, quote unquote, if you want to buy into the generalities, than women, but I don't even buy into that at times. I've met a lot of guys who are like, I would much rather just be in a relationship and I really don't care about the sex. It's a piece of it, but I'd rather like have the conversations and be intimate and share space and okay, if we get hard and have sex, which is always interesting when they're that way and their partner's like, I just want sex. I'm just a dog. Give me some sex.
Oh,
It's a
yeah,
tough one to navigate.
I work with women also, and the women I work with are they're horny and ready,
Yes,
and it's like the misconceptions are misconceptions.
they're very much so.
Yeah,
And the
but
generalizing, there's so much generalizing that happens, especially with guys that I know both of us work with, like the guys coming out later in life.
mhm.
There's a lot of misconceptions like, I got to catch up. I've lost so much time. And it's like, not really. You're just activating something that really is yearning for attention now. You can feel like you've lost all this time, but that's actually going to be one of the biggest boner killers in the world, in my perspective. The more you put like this expectation on something like that, you're going to have a harder time getting to the true pleasure. Like, I got to do it. I got to do it. And then you do it so quickly. And then it's like, well, that didn't really satisfy. I thought being out and finally getting to do this and the kid in the candy store mentality. I'm like, yes, be a kid, but realize it's kind of like when you eat too much candy, it doesn't really make you feel good.
Yeah, and I think with gay men, I'll just say society in general, we lean towards the pornographic of sex, which is the visual, the sensationalism of sex. It's how, companies sell us stuff and tell us that we are not beautiful enough, or our bodies are not perfect enough, or we should this, we should be that. And eroticism is different. Eroticism is not the pornographic version of sex. Eroticism is personal power. Eroticism is our life force energy. It's how we not only see sex, but how we see the world. And, if we can look at it from that perspective, we have different experiences than I'm mimicking a pornographic version of what I think sex is, because that has been my study.
Yeah.
My information and my course of study has been pornography and or television and film of how I'm supposed to be in a romantic relationship based on Disney movies or whatever I've been watching.
Wicked, whatever it is.
Whatever. And it's all sort of like, well, those are great stories.
Right.
And, sometimes they might resonate with you in real life, but it is that kind of knowing inside yourself of like, is this my narrative?
Mm-hmm.
Or am I just like following what I've been told?
Mm-hmm. And I love that from what you do with Connect and some of your other retreats, you're all about either redefining or reawakening the narrative to draw closer to that internal self and really helping people step into that space.
Yeah. And my retreats, my longer format retreats. So I have another retreat in June, in Joshua retreat called Sacred. My retreats are a little bit different than what other colleagues of mine offer, in the sense that I offer 90-minute one-on-one sessions with certified and trained sexological body workers and sex coaches. And what that does to a container is it allows you to really hone in on things that you want to explore personally with someone who's like really skilled and trained to meet you there. And then there's also group exercises that we do together and group erotic experiences that build brotherhood and also give everybody a chance to touch each other, learn touch, learn how to receive in a group space, and also witnessing. Witnessing is so powerful, to be able to see other men in their erotic expressions that is not pornography.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's sort of like,
it's so awakening. I mean, I've been in a couple of other experiences where we went to that space and And those who don't want to continue in that space, it's totally acceptable. And those are like, let's go. My husband and I were on a cruise a couple of years ago, and there was some of that work being done, and I was there for a couple of the sessions, but then I decided I'm going to go to do the stand-up comedy because I really want to do stand-up comedy. And I got done one day, and I came back to like the room where they were doing the erotic work, and it was really powerful. And I actually left very quickly. It was really powerful to see my husband in that space, and then see how much that he was being, I don't want to say, I'm going to say being someone different, but being released into the experience. And I thought, I don't want to be the voyeur on this. I want him to have that experience. And that's why I left. I'm like, it was cool for me to have that little glimpse, that snapshot of, ooh, look at what he's doing. Ironically, I have been in another experience where I was facilitator for an experience that he was a participant in. That was even more interesting because I'm like observing all of this, right? And it's such a powerful thing when you allow yourself to be in observation and see, as you said, how someone else is touching and feeling their erotic self and experience that, whether it's erotic self or other things. But to me, it's really fascinating to watch the eroticism stuff because I learn about myself. I see myself in some ways, and then I see myself like, that wouldn't be what I would do, but that's, oh wow, because then I see my shadow, I see my fear, I see all these other things that come alive. And that's what I think is so amazing about how you craft these experiences in a very sacred container and a safe space for someone to go experience that and find themselves at a whole different level. So I'm excited for you in this, the two that are coming up, but definitely the soonest one, which is in March, in a couple of months here, that you guys that are listening, you really need to, if you're interested, you need to hop on quickly. I know the spaces are starting to fill up, and really explore with Court. He offers a lot of different ways to participate in that. Again, I am looking forward to hopefully getting to experience this. We're just working through some details on the work front. And what do you feel like is the greatest thing? And this is a loaded question, Court, and I hate asking these, but it's always fun to kind of see what the response is. What is the greatest thing from your perspective of being an erotic being?
I mean, the thing that comes to my mind is I'm never not an erotic being. I'm always sort of walking in this way, which is I'm walking in my truth. I'm walking in my turn on. I'm walking like you. I walk into spaces that are just uncomfortable for me because I know there's something there for me. So, when I decide to do a new program or I decide to attend a program as attendee, or I decide to step into a new relationship or whatever it is, if there's something there that's like, ugh, this feels a little uncomfortable and I want it, I'm willing because I know that there's something there for me. And so I feel like I'm always walking in an erotic body. And that means I'm turned on. My life turns me on. I get to travel a lot. I get to be with really interesting people. I do work that I really love and appreciate. I eat really delicious food. I make, all these things that like really feed me from a lot of different perspectives. I'm living a turned on life. And to me, like that is my favorite thing about my eroticism is that it is full 360.
Well, and I love what you just said. It feeds you. It really, truly feeds you. And these are the things that I feel like just being able to do a podcast like this. People say, wow, you've done a lot. You've done all these podcasts. I said, yes, because it brings me alive. It's like the one thing I've told my husband over and over and over again. The guys that listen all the time, they're like, oh, he's going to say this bit again. So here we go. You can take everything else away from me. Do not take my podcast away from me, because it's my one space that I just feel like it's my little container. I get to play. I kind of get to be a little sassy bitch at times. And other times I get to go really deep and like really show, be in that vulnerable space. And sometimes it's crying and whatever. Right now, I'm a little turned on. I'm going to be really honest. Like just the talking about being in our erotic selves, there's a turn on that's happening within me. And I love it that still is a heartbeat within myself as an erotic being that is still very much alive.
Yeah.
And I would hate to see that piece die out. So
and sorry, when I say turn on, I just want to clarify that I'm not walking around with a hard cock all day long. It's more of like I feel aroused. I feel alive in what I'm doing. Just wanted to clarify that.
No, and that's what I mean too. There's an eroticism that's lit up right now because of this conversation, but it's also it's almost like I feel alive. Because well, part of it is I feel alive because I can have a really great conversation with someone like you where there's no shame, there's no guilt, there's no, oh, we shouldn't be talking about this, which is part of the problem right now around anything to do with eroticism and sex. We are still, as a society, so buried in so many ways in the shame and patriarchy of, okay, let's not talk about that. When if we had more of these conversations, it would be so freeing. And I think the planet would begin to shift in so many different ways.
Agreed.
Yeah. So, all right. So the event is coming up March 6th through the 9th in Joshua Tree, California. It is called Connect. You can find it on your website, which is the Body Vox, right?
Body Vox. Yep.
Yeah, Body Vox, VOX, guys, VOX. Okay. And Court is also going to be a guest in our men's chat in February. So I'm looking forward to that. We're going to talk about jealousy and the ways that jealousy shows up in open relationships and desires and kink and bedroom and all these other things. So that's happening on February 17th. So we're going to get another taste of Court right before, about a month before all this. Well, actually, it'll be just a couple of weeks before the Connect event. But if you want to connect and go to Connect, you need to go act now, because I know spaces are starting to move, and he's a pretty popular guy, so he's gonna get this one knocked out. But I'm excited for you, Court, and I are gonna actually do some stuff together starting in February, right, man?
Yeah, so I have an online community as well. It's got content around eroticism and sexuality. And my intention for the year is to have a new contributor do a takeover once a month, every month, all of next year. Different thought leaders in our space, and I've invited you to take over.
He did. He said, "Who's the oldest guy I know that can come in and talk about shit?" So,
yeah, I just in community, I recognize that I don't want to be the only voice that I'm amplifying in my community. So, inviting other people to share their thoughts and their knowledge and their wisdom feels right for me. And so I'm excited to have you on. I've always been a fan of your work and what you do with your group. And so excited to see, the types of content that you post, and excited about it.
I'm excited about it too. I love being part of this. I've been part of some other groups, and I don't jump into something like this lightly. It's like, it's really got to be aligned in my values and in my mission. And I've always just felt like Court is bringing something to the world, guys. In a way, there's a lot of people who do this work. I feel like he's one who's bringing it in a way in just a really genuine, authentic alignment. And that's why I'm so proud to be part of what he's building. I'm so proud to be promoting what he's doing, and just helping hopefully heal the planet, or at least help heal some gay men's lives, bisexual. And it's not just gay and bisexual men, gay, bi, trans. Everyone is invited into that. All men of those genres are invited into this space. And I would say that if you're like struggling with some of that, that's probably a really good space to go, like, okay, let's go experience, because you will have an amazing experience anytime you're doing that self-work and pushing yourself forward. So
come play with me.
Yes, come play with him. I'm looking forward to hopefully that happening. I'm working hard to make it happen because I really want to be there. So anyway, Court.
Yeah, for people, sorry to interrupt you, for people who are coming through you, just mention Rick's name or the code 40+, so that I know to thank Rick.
Yeah. He will.
So,
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad you shared your time. And again, thank you what you're putting out there in the world, on the planet, in a way to keep us all constantly moving forward and connecting in ways that we all need to. And guys, thanks for being listeners. Don't forget to get over to Court's site. It's the Body Vox. If you want to be in our community, hop onto Facebook. The men's chats, you can find them on my website. A lot of stuff going on. That's why I said make sure you got pen and paper here, because we're giving you a whole lot of stuff. Of course, everything to connect with Court will be on the website as well. And go out there and connect to yourself, and don't be afraid to step to the precipice and stand at the cliff's edge, knowing the resilience is right there on the other side. So take care, everyone, and have a wonderful, wonderful time. And we'll see you in just another week.
That's a wrap for 40 Plus. Gay men, gay talk, where size doesn't matter. We drop our bullshit, get over our screwed up fears, make bold moves, and live life without apologies. Don't forget to join us on Facebook at 40 Plus, Gay Men, Gay Talk, where the conversations continue.